Well, I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Today in the U.S., it's a holiday. Well, actually, it was yesterday, but we're celebrating it today, Juneteenth. And it feels appropriate to at least mark that, which is sort of it's a celebration of freedom for our Black and Brown brothers and sisters who have been enslaved. And it's a way of marking freedom. And actually, our co-housing community last night, we celebrated by having a dinner with a lot of red food. And it was just a lot of celebration and there was a lot of joy, which was really nice. So I just wanted to mark that. And I do want to mention something. I know I've been sharing a little bit about my adventures of being a volunteer for an Afghan family and then also working on a project with UMass for the Afghan women who are isolated. And we had something happen Saturday, which was for me really meaningful because, in this group, we always talk about the power of listening and, and we talk about it. But what I had done is I invited the executive director of the agency, Catholic Charities, to come to the session for women and for the women to come and just share their challenges and their problems with this woman. And they were talking about, one woman is separated from her husband and she's here alone with her 3 children. And she's worried, how is she going to pay her rent because she can't work because she's taking care of her children? And how could the agency help get her husband who's stranded in Afghanistan? And it was on like that, some really heavy duty challenges. And in the evening, I called my family because I was able to get the 2 women who I'm helping come to this program. And I just said, I'm curious, how was this for you? And for the first time, I could hear joy in her voice. And she said, I can't believe that she listened to us. And that, I thought she would just sort of listen to one thing and then she would walk away and not, she was worried that the executive director couldn't stand to hear all this negative feedback. And these women who have been suffering isolated by themselves internally for months. And here there's a space where all these women were just pouring out. And it was just such a beautiful experience to see this happening. And then to hear it really was meaningful to my own family. So I just, we talk sometimes in this group, but to actually see it in action was really meaningful. And I just felt like I wanted to share that this morning. So, thank you. And also I'm really pleased to welcome Steve this morning. Every time Steve is within his presence, he always has a special quality. And I always get to enjoy that and it deepens something within me. I feel a spiritual presence when I'm with Steve. So thank you for being with us today.
Yes. That was very inspiring, Melinda. Thank you for sharing your journey with us there. I think of this group as a group of helpers that are nourishing each other and inspiring each other, and a kind of wonderful integration of thinking about things and understanding things and learning from each other is so important. So I'm very pleased on this Juneteenth day celebration to have Steve, and I just love this integration that Steve is doing on Jewish practices and focusing and bringing the traditional wisdoms from the Jewish tradition and seeing how that's crossing with our focusing understandings and practices. Steve wants me to introduce him as a long-term focuser. How many years, Steve? 20?
Over 22 now. Yeah.
22 years. A focusing oriented therapist, and a grandfather. But I'm going to have him say more about the grandfather part because I love to hear him talk about that. What I would say about Steve, from my point of view, is that Steve, you have a wonderful gift of metaphor and bringing things into the pith of these very deep, complex issues, and finding a way of expressing them so that they're really inviting and available to us. And so I'm really looking forward to how you're going to do that this morning.
Thank you, and I'll try to live up to that pith. And I just wanted also want to say how inspiring it was for me to be hearing what you experienced and what you participated in, Melinda. And I'm calling this particular topic, if you will, that explores a motto that has come to me. Calling it, as a first draft, I'm calling it Mensch-ing forward. And I work with those two words, and they work with me in my life. And I really feel when I hear you talking about making space for the people to be able to speak and to be heard, I think that is a form of mensching forward. And then there was this expanding kind of thing that happened where, Melinda, you're talking about talking to your family about it, and they were responsive to it. And there was that kind of an emanation from the, I don't know what to call it, but first draft, I would call it a generative goodness that you contributed to people who really needed and deserve it. So I just wanted to start in that particular way. And so, yeah, I want to start with, I will start with the fact, yes, that I'm a grandfather. And so that, so when I think in terms of, I just have a 1.5-year-old and a 20-month-old tomorrow. And so they, of course, bring lots of joy. At the same time, it brings a kind of an inspiration. So when I think in terms of mensching forward, which I'll speak more about, I think in terms of mensching forward in the service of. And so then what would I be mentioning? What is mensching forward for me, or my particular contribution to it? The focal point for me is in the service of my grandkids, and in the service, if these things can happen, for them to learn something from me, as well as that for them after I'm gone, may it not be too soon, that there's something that is both personally and in terms of guidance, that they may be able to draw on in terms of support from whatever sphere I may be in, minimally from their memory, but something like that. So, in fact, there is within the Jewish tradition, after somebody dies, and at a funeral, there's a saying that goes, may their memory be for a blessing. That's interesting phrasing, for a blessing. But maybe it's not only the memory is a blessing, but it's also for people carrying forward blessings generationally. So anyway, that's my intent. So speaking in terms of guidance, as I was thinking about this presentation, I kept having this memory from a very old movie. So some of you may remember a movie that was in about 1966 or 60, no, more like 68 or 69. It was called Charlie. Does anybody remember that movie? Okay. Hey, Jim. So anyhow, so what do I remember about that movie, and why does it sticks out for me? So how it sticks out is that here was this guy, Charlie, and he he was being interviewed. He'd had Down syndrome, and then there was this brain surgery that was done, or something like that, that made him move from having Down syndrome to being some kind of genius. But then he went back to being who he was. But before he did, there was an interview. And in the interview, they were talking about this generation that I was part of, that kind of hippie radical, hippie generation and that kind of thing. And I made fun of the line for a long time because it seemed so hokey. It said, goalless and guideless. And so I wonder, well, why did that stick with me for 50 years or more? And so I'm thinking, maybe I was, maybe I saw there was some truth in that I didn't really want to accept at that point in time. So later on, being able to kind of looking for guidance in some kind of way, and looking for guidance within wisdom traditions, my own and in others. So there's that little story, and I'm going to tell you another story, and not about me, but about the origin of this particular Mensch-ing forward, which has become a kind of has become both a motto as well as a project for me. So it goes something like this. Way back when, I would say probably about 35 years ago or so, I had started to make my way, making some connection with my Jewish heritage, and I was at a synagogue discussion group, and there was a book by another Klagsbrun. I don't know if any relationship to Joan, but it was around quotes around it, some looking at certain aspects of statements of Jewish wisdom from tradition, and there was one that stood out for me, and I'm going to share it with you. I think it's very relevant, and it goes something like this. Some of you may be aware of this particular story. There was a rabbi. There was Rabbi Zuzia of Anipol, and he was in the 18th and early 19th century, and he was in that kind of mystical Hasidic tradition, and he was a master, and he had students, and he was in the Ukraine. Anyway, the story goes is that he was on his deathbed, and that his students were around, and they were there both comforting him and waiting for some kind of statements of wisdom to come from him. Anyway, as the story goes, and probably it was there's truth to it, that he was going in and out of on his way to dying, and when he came out, he was crying, and he said to his students, he says, when I die, I'm not going to be asked, why weren't you more like Moses? I'm going to be asked, why weren't you more like Zuzia? And as focusers, so one of the things that focusing is it's an authenticity practice. So way before I even knew anything about it, that particular story stuck with me. And also, interestingly enough, in my life, before the Jewish high holidays, there would be some time of reflection, and I did have a connection with Jean in relationship to Judaism over the years. And one of the things that we did was, before the holidays, we would listen to each other about what our intention was for the year in some kind of way. Anyway, I kept having this kind of thing about forming a group called Zuzia's Brothers, and where we would talk about the challenge of not experiencing what Zuzia did with that kind of sorrow. I mean, it's not a bad, he was a great guy and all of that kind of thing, but he missed something in terms of his own fingerprint on his life, and that came through for him. So I have a group of friends, and we look at that over the last number of years. So I'm going to start with this. I think there was something in that Zuzia was missing. Zuzia had he had wisdoms. He had inherited wisdoms and guidance. He devoted himself to that. He had the kind of strength to be able to take on those particular kind of wisdoms. That's one thing that he had. What he, I imagine to myself, one of the things that he might not have had is that he might not have had the kind of listening that Melinda was talking about, or the kind of inner and the kind of interpersonal listening that we have in, as focusers, to be able to hear from his Zuzia in some kind of way. And so that led to those tears that he passed on to his students and with his words. And who knows, maybe if he'd had both in some kind of way, he might have cried before on his deathbed, but maybe his tears would have been, in some kind of way connected to saying goodbye. And he may not have wanted to, or even if he was ready to, he may have been sad about dying. So it might have been a different thing if those two things had come together. So it's become an aspiration for me, or it's become an aspiration, and I don't know which came first, the implicit aspiration for me to bring those two things together, inherited wisdom and kind of experiential, organic inner wisdom that we tap into in focusing. I don't know if the aspiration came first or the motto. But anyway, somewhere a number of months ago, the phrase "Mensch-ing forward" came for me, and so it's. I'll talk a little bit about the different parts. I don't know if I'm just going to assume that not everybody knows the term Mensch, but just in case, I'll say it very, very quickly. It refers to a person who is who does good in the world in some kind of way, or a person can be identified as a good person in some fashion or another. And there are all kinds of character traits that particular person may have, and certain kinds of virtues and values and principles that one who is mensching tries to adhere to, or tries to be informed by. So that word, of course, means a lot to me. Growing up Jewish, there would be the phrase, be a mensch, that kind of thing. And sometimes it would feel a bit like nagging, or maybe often it would feel like being nagging, but in some kind of way, there was something important about it. Well, there is something important about it. I find it now. So but I wanted to put the ing after it, and as to, which comes from, from my our focusing life, which is process. And so being a mensch is a process, and I like thinking of it as a mensching process, and which has its challenges and its joys and its ups and its downs and all of that kind of thing. So there's that. It's a living kind of thing. And bringing the word forward together for me was also something like well, that was a way of, for me, one of the things that's the heart of focusing, and that is unique to focusing, or to is that experience of finding or having the life forward movement through the interaction with a felt sense, having that life forward movement find us, or we find it. And so I wanted to bring those two together, those two parts of life together. So that's a project, and I'm currently so then it's kind of like, how can mensching be nourished, and how can forwarding be nourished? And so one of the ways that mensching can be nourished is which I've become involved with, is a Jewish tradition that's about 1,000 years old called Musar, which is focused on character development. And there's been a resurgence in North America. It's spread, but in the last 20 or so years, it had been very active, and unfortunately, it had died out during the Holocaust. And so lots of the places in which that was central had been destroyed, and people within it. But there still have been some green shoots coming through the rocks, and it's been rejuvenated. And there are two particular people who are responsible for that through their books. And anyhow, so Musar is looking at character traits and in a sense lived virtues. And so then I've been working with that, but and taking some classes around it. And how is forwarding nourished? Well, through focusing. And one of the things that I missed, and this is the project that I'm doing, is that the Musar of looking at the various character traits like humility or trust or honor or respect or varying kinds of things like that. The way we looked at them, the way we were exploring them was it was interesting conceptual ideas about what those virtues were, but there wasn't enough for me, and I think for other people, the focusing, taking things downstairs and kind of taking that particular virtue and then finding where it lives. Also finding what's, obstacles and personal story connected to it. So my project that I'm doing is I'm working with the teacher now, and I'm introducing him to focusing, so that when he has a chance, and he's open to it, and so that when he has a chance to teach the class again, that they'll be more personalized. So that's the project. And I'll say very quickly that it's also a daily motto. And the motto has an impact. So I get up in the morning or various times in the morning, and I might say something to the effect of, well, what needs mensching forward right now? Or another thing I might say would be, what does mensching forward want of me? And and each question has a different feel to it. And so instead of defining what mensching forward means, when I ask that question, there are energies. And I started to do a little bit of that. And the motto creates certain kind of energies. And I was talking to Lynn about this, and one, first started with something, well, what does it, when I'm mensching forward, what happens? And there's a certain kind of energy that holds me together. And so one word went steward. like stewardship. Another word came, it was like shepherding. And then finally it was not finally, but we'll see what comes next, was like a farmer, farming, cultivating, that kind of thing. So I'm telling you that, not, that these mottos that can be, and it's a life motto, they can have certain kind of explicit, felt, and implicit power, energy and power to them. So I'm going to stop there, and just I'm very, when I was thinking about starting today, I was thinking how much, given that this is an important, how much I want to hear. And I want to also say that I'm very interested. So I'm using the term Mensch-ing, it's something that I grew up with. One of the things that it does is it connects me with my roots and my heritage. But we all, many of us have different heritages and ancestral connections, both by inheritance or by choice. And so I'm very interested to just what any kind of response that people have in terms of what I've spoken about, how it resonates, either in terms of motto or in terms of bringing focusing and wisdom traditions together. So I'll shut up now. I want to hear.
Steve, I wonder if we can ask that question that I love of Jean's, of what would we want the word menching to mean?
Okay.
Is there another word from people's other traditions that you would use that word? I just wanted to say, for me, I'm part Jewish, but didn't grow up Jewish. The word Mensch has a very particular feeling about it. It's male for me, a Mensch. Not that women can't be Mensches, but it's a male feeling. It's very solid. And like you can count on this person. This is a good person. They're not gonna manipulate you or sell you something or be nasty to you or talk behind your back. There's something like straightforward, and it's a very particular kind of goodness to me. And I love the idea of menching forward. To me, the way that it combines genes. Amazing faith in life, in its microcosm of life, and the idea of menching forward. For me, it means like if something is so complicated and I feel overwhelmed, if I think of your menching forward, it simplifies it. It says like, just do that, just be that, just, there's something very, I don't know what the word would be, very direct about it and uncomplicated in a sort of sturdy way. So I just was curious about what other people think of, particularly in terms of the word mensch, or if there's another word that you have for that.
It's like a soldier on.
Soldiering on, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to ask, can you use that word for women, or is there another word you would use?
Yeah, yes, it's not. Yeah, I know that's been the how I was associating it too. But I think in the last anything that I've read has said that it's not just for men.
Okay,
because
good.
it's easy to mix it up because the first three letters are MEN. But it may have, with that soldiering forward, it may have a certain kind of yang element to it, but it doesn't have to be, just men.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I love what you said. It's a great concept to think, how am I going to mensch forward today? Right. Thank you.
Like to say that in our age of queerness, there's something nice to me about it having a kind of male energy. It doesn't mean it's just for men, of course, but there is something nice about that male energy for women, in my mind.
I'll just add, I'm English, and in England, we have Jewish people, but it's very different than New York. And I speak very basic German. So I didn't even contemplate it being a Yiddish word. I saw it as German and as quite human, without the English problem of gender, or even the English problem of we have the body, which can mean the corpse. We have all of this with English. And to me, it sort of sounds German. It sounds very clear. Yes, it sounds upright and dignified, but it sort of sounds a positive German clearness to it, which I enjoy. And it's just totally different.
When I was making my notes that I ignored, I was going to give a little bit of the origin of the term, and it is a German term, and that had been. And Yiddish is a mixture of Hebrew and German, and so, but it started as a German term. So I just wanted to say that, and so there's a certain clearness to it in that kind of way. And so I want to pick up on what somebody was saying very quickly about, how can I mensch forward? What am I going to mensch forward today? So can do it, there can be all kinds of bullet points that, you can fill in. So how am I going to, we can even mensch forward we can mensch forward the dishes that need to be cleaned. So sometimes that gets me going with that. And the other is we can mensch forward on the other side, the big one, which would be mensch forward our death or our mortality in some kind of way, which can be very powerful as well, and all things in between. So anyway, just wanted to, and I want to hear from more people.
I grew up in a really sexist household, so that mensch was really only for men. And then, fast forward, 50 some years. And so if I could put a new meaning to it, and appreciate that. But there's this struggle, or there's this tension in between the two. It's part of me. I'm protesting the word mensch because it feels so male. So anyways, I'm just sitting here observing and feeling and sensing and protesting.
Melinda, I'm wondering if there's another word that you would use, because that word has been sort of ruined for you in a certain kind of way, or it's been complicated. But what word would you use for that?
I know one of the facets, like a diamond, was this inherent goodness. But that's just not. I mean, I like the word mensch because it's so short and succinct. So I'd have to, really think about, could there be another word? And part of me, I really would love to make it be mensch, because it's I know what it means, and I want to be included. So I don't know. I'm just sort of, as I said, I'm sitting here. I saw Monica.
I had this. Yeah. Oh, Monica, go ahead. Sorry.
I had a partner for 20 years who was Jewish and older, and he would say to me, "You're a real mensch." And I could feel the word in my body and have all of those qualities, Steve, that you're talking about. Just like, you're a real mensch. You really get things done. You buckle down. You continue. You persevere. And honestly, I always thought it meant female. So I couldn't imagine it being used for a man because it was always used for me, like you're a real mensch. And I just thought, this is great. That's what I want to be, a real mensch. So Melinda, you are a real mensch.
Oh, wow.
You know, in the best possible way that Alvin would have said. You know, you have all the qualities of a real mensch.
I'd like to say too that I'm technically Jewish. My mother was Jewish, but both my parents were atheists. And then my adult life I spent with somebody who was Jewish, but not part of organized religion. So my mother-in-law's first language was Yiddish. And this is the first time I'm hearing that women aren't mensches. That's a surprise to me. But when you were talking, I was thinking, how is mensch like a bodhisattva, which is something in Buddhism?
I'm doing, you know, I got excited because as I was preparing, I was equating bodhisattva with mensch. So yeah.
I think my felt sense of the two, like being a mensch, seem to my mind that translates into somebody who is being a good person, you know, like they're rising above pettiness. And often in my life, it's been used as a compliment rather than a nag. Like, you know, that person's a real mensch. Like they put the extra in and went beyond what most of us who are just interested in our self-interest. So bodhisattva for me, just because maybe I've learned it in different contexts, but it's like this lofty thing, you know, living one's life for the benefit of all beings. So being a mensch, sort of like what Lynn was saying, seems simpler, just straightforward. And yet they both obviously have in common, like doing things for others rather than being, you know, oriented toward self.
Something very non-transactional about being a mensch. It's not, I'm going to do this so that I get into heaven. I'm going to be good because. It's, I'm going to be good. It's just rooted in love. You know, it's not, there's not a if then. It's just, I'm going to do good and do extra because like the Mother Teresa poem, which of course Mother Teresa comes up for me when we're talking about Judaism for no good reason. But do you guys know that poem that's attributed to her that says something like, people like build and people will destroy it, and build anyway, and love and people will hate on you, and love anyway, because it's not about you and the other people, it's between you and God. Like you have a contract with God. It's not about be nice so other people like you, or be nice because something's good. It's be nice and it'll still be a shit show, but it's not between you and that. It's between you and God. It's something that's anchoring, and also like anchoring upward. You know that.
Love that, Rachel. I have the image of the anchoring and the God life, the whole big system being below rather than above, you know, anchoring into the rootedness. Doing it because you're a tree, and of course you have these roots, you know, down there.
Yeah. But there's something about, you're also rooted, even though you can't feel it, unless you keep reminding yourself, you're also rooted upward. You're rooted to the sun and the sky, even as much, but you need to kind of be reminded always, you know, so there's something about that.
Mm.
It's like an integration of the higher and the deeper
Yes.
in some kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of time because I know we're getting close to that time when some people need to exit and go off to their lives and work lives and things like that. Maybe we could have one more person to comment, and then we could go into breakout rooms. How does that sound? Unless there are more than one waving their hand. I want to give people a chance.
Yeah.
Oh, Monica.
No, I'm just really taken with the male female aspect that keeps getting mentioned here. And for me, Mensch is female, and I'm also noticing the sky god and the earth mother, the father and the mother. And very recently, I asked my father, who was originally Catholic, and my stepmother, who is a famous pagan goddess teacher, do I have to choose between the sky god and the earth mother? And my father said, no, you don't have to choose. And my stepmother says, yeah, you have to choose. and I realize there's been a tension all my life, because as a child, I was brought up Catholic, but then as a teenager, I had the pagan religion introduced. And there was something in me that was never completely comfortable with feeling like I had to choose. Imagine trying to change a child's religion, or change someone's religion once they're a teenager. It's too late. It's in there already, and that's what's coming to me now about we don't have to choose between the male and the female. We don't have to choose between the sky god and the earth mother. Both are God, and it can come together and mensch forward.
Yeah.
And we can serve the highest and the deepest good.
Yeah. Yes.
Anybody else last minute? Or
Steve,
Lynn, you were going to say?
I had a question. Steve, I really like that you introduced this concept of Musar. And it really speaks to me about this idea of finding your spiritual path and overcoming, the negative appetite, or what is it called in Yiddish? Like the evil eye, right? Yetzer hara.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very similar in some ways to Buddhism. But what I wanted to ask you, you said you belong to groups that study this. So is this under the Musar Institute, or that's how you find groups?
Yeah, you'd look under them. There's two major places. One is the Musar Institute, which is based in Vancouver. Well, everything's based online these days. And then there's another one.
It's based in Florida.
Ah, okay. That's the founder of it lives in Vancouver. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
So the Musar Institute teaches lots of courses. And then there's the Center for Contemporary Musar, and that is on the East Coast. And in a certain sense, in the class that the class that I took recently was with somebody who was trained at the Musar Institute as a leader and facilitator. So, and who happens to live in Winnipeg, where I live. But those two places would be the ones, and you get a feel for which one speaks to you. The East Coast one has a number of Jungian psychotherapists who are facilitators, so they may bring more of the psycho-spiritual in. I'm not, but so anyway, you'll find it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
I just
Yeah.
want to say before we, go into our breakout rooms, I was interested in if anybody wanted to comment about the basic thrust of your practice, Steve, of an ideal that then guides you, that you, Steve, think of it as mensching forward, and that combines the forward movement of life and the Mensch, and then that inspires you, and that is a direction sort of having an ideal that then you take in and you focus on, and it carries forward. And I wondered if others of us have that. I know I do, that I think of something that's going to inspire me, a concept, an idea, a value, and I take it in, and then it does something to help me move forward. But I wondered if anybody had any other comments about sort of starting from that place of an ideal or a value or an inspiration.
I think what comes up for me is the ideal is the mensching forward helps me think of my ideal of integrating parts of myself more. And when Monica spoke about the mother-in-law asking her to choose between these very powerful pieces of her upbringing, it put me in touch with how much I've led out of that I have to reject my early religion in order to be a whole person. And then thinking of what Steve was talking about with mensching forward and finding your motto and putting that together with what Monica said, it's like I don't have to reject that early part of me. I can conceive of it in a very different way, especially with Rachel's loving energy. If you pour that into it, then it's just something I breathe more fully. It's a bodily sensation of opening.
Right. Wow, I love that. It's
And
like
the motto. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve.
The motto then that you might be working with, Dorothy, is and searching, and maybe it's emerged already. The motto helps to form some sort of integrative linking, and that helps it not to be an either or kind of thing. Yeah. Thank you.
I really liked that idea of making it your own, that you don't either have to swallow or spit out what you're given, that you can make it yours. We can make mensching forward what we want it to be.
Or any other word before the word forward.
Right.
Or what we want it to be. I like that about you don't have to swallow or spit out. There's a deepening that can come from that.
Right.
Not having to do that. How were people's experiences within the breakout rooms and with your partnerships there, and anything that you'd like to share about what you heard or what emerged for you?
There's always a kind of pause and like, what shall I share? And this transition of coming back into the bigger group from your small group. Anything is welcome.
I have a question. I don't know much about all the rituals or the age-related religious things that a Jewish person goes through, but isn't bat mitzvah or bat mitzvah has some aspect of this that you're grown up, but you're going to be this kind of person now? Is there that expectation in that? That here we are putting you on this path of thinking, now that you're growing, this is how you're going to live life.
It's a good.
That's a great question. Yeah. I'll give some partial answer. I think that it's an invitation in a way. So there's the bar bat mitzvah, so there's the preparation around it and that kind of thing. And the thought behind the tradition is that it's an invitation to the young person to begin their adulthood, and to begin their adulthood as a member of the community, and to begin to take on. That's sort of like an introduction to values and principles and practices and that kind of thing. There is the experiences that I have is it hasn't been sort of like this is how you're going to live kind of thing. It's more what it may be more of here we're welcoming you, and what can you bring, in some kind of way to these values in some way. At least that's within those particular branches that I've been part of.
I think in Hindu religion, there are some similar kind of ceremony. They call it the thread ceremony, which on the outside looks like you're teaching them to belong to a cult of some religion. However, underlying thinking is to put that child on the path of thinking about these things. I had a ritual done when my son graduated. Instead of giving him a graduation party, I had a puja done, a ceremony done in the house where we got together, and the idea was to launch this kid into the college life and what have you. And I remember the priest who came, first thing he said was that now that you are going, now you have come to this stage, you have to take care of certain things, like you have to be protective of this earth and you have to be protective of the animals. Things like that, which a young person, sees it as black and white, but underneath there are larger ideas introduced to their mind to say, you go be a mensch, you go be a bigger person, that I don't think that is given to them like that because they can't understand the bigness of it, but kind of seeds are planted in there. Yeah.
And a lot will depend on the person who's teaching the young person, and if their relationship and the way that they can actually communicate seeds and then get to know that particular person. There's a lot will depend on that. Otherwise, it can come across it won't spark. Otherwise, it won't spark somebody.
But you need the fertile soil of the family to pull those values. You need that. Yeah. So I don't know if we are in our lifetime given those opportunities that we don't fully see or understand, to take this path.
Yeah, I just want to just take one little thing from what you just said, Soshi, and just that phrase, take this path. And so when I hear you say it, it's and the tone in which you say it, this path is very meaningful, and it's not always taken.
In our group, we were talking about that, like we were saying, some people have this innate quality to them, as if you can't develop it by effort, and I would like to believe that we can. You know, I could certainly work very hard on it. I need to work very hard on it, you know. But even to be reminded of be this, you can be this, is a little encouraging to me. To
Yeah.
like to think about it today is very encouraging to me.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe I could be a little bit be like that.
Yeah.
Mm.
And maybe to assume a goodwill within each person, that some way.
Mm.
To assume, yeah, to assume a goodwill within each person.
Mm.
Yeah.
And the development of the path is in that word forward. Trust that it will be developed in you.
I mean, I was saying in mine that I have started recently in the morning just saying a 1-minute prayer. May I enjoy the wonders of this day, and may I be present and kind to people, to anyone I meet. And I think it's really helped me be more kind, be more mensch-like, right?
Mm.
Yeah, there's something in a there's something in a in a motto or an intention that fits with prayer, and you have that and you speak that, and it has an effect.
It does.
An unfolding effect.
It does.
I like to think, because the kindness is in you, the intention to bring it forward, you know, that helps it grow, I think.
I think it's time for us to have our poem, and we have one from you, Steve, and one from Barbara, right?
Well, it's just I'll try and hold on just a second. I'll go fast. For me, it's hold on. Here we go. I'll find you. Yeah, there's a. I'm a Paul Simon fan, and he had a song called he did a song around 2005 or 2006 on an album called Surprise, and it is the song is called Wartime Prayer, and there's a verse in that song that, as I think about we think about what we've been talking about here, I'll share the verse. He says in the song, "You cannot walk with the holy," and I spelt it WHOLLY, if you're just a halfway decent man. I don't pretend that I'm a mastermind with a genius marketing plan. I'm just trying to tap into some wisdom. Even a little drop will do. Want to rid my heart of envy and cleanse my soul of rage before I'm through. And so for me, this points to the potential that we have to tap into and cross with both bottom up and top down, and inherited and inner emergent little drops of wisdom. So I think he captures that in the song. So just wanted to share that with you. And Dorothy has a poem by John O'Donohue.
What's of the song, Steve? We'll look it up.
It's called Wartime Prayers.
Wartime Prayers. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so should I send it to you to read, or should I read it?
You could read it. That's fine. That's
fine. Yeah. Oh, you can. Okay, it'll save a little time.
Yeah.
All
yeah.
Right. Okay, so thank you. So Dorothy and I met for about 20 minutes or or so a couple of days ago, and I shared with her what we'd be doing, and so that she could then find a poem that can suit, so or resonate. So the poem is called For Death, and it's called, and from the book To Bless the Space Between Us, and it's by John O'Donohue. From the moment you were born, your death has walked beside you, though it seldom shows its face. You still feel its empty touch when fear invades your life, or what you love is lost, or inner damage is incurred. Yet, when destiny draws you into these spaces of poverty, and your heart stays generous until some door opens into the light, you are quietly befriending your death, so that you will have no need to fear when your time comes to turn and leave. That the silent presence of your death would call your life to attention, wake you up to how scarce your time is, and to the urgency to become free and equal to the call of your destiny. That you would gather yourself and decide carefully how you now can live the life you would love to look back on from your deathbed.